Okay, welcome back to the October 6th, 2022 Commission meeting. It is 10:28 a.m. and we are just out of our closed session to review the petition. Following the oral argument and review of the record, the Commission denies the Pub Tavern's petition for review. The Commission affirms in its entirety the administrative law judge's initial order, including the revocation of the Pub's Tavern license, and adopts the initial order as the Commission's final order. Thank you, everyone.
And Sharon, just a reminder that a written order will be issued.
And a written order will be issued soon. Okay, so next up is the budget review. Is Chrisinda Hansen available?
I am. Good morning.
I have a quick question. Did Senator Hawley get able to get back on? I know that.
Yeah, let's actually do a quick roll call, Director Griffin, just to make sure we still have everyone.
So for the record, can I just say that Commissioner Reeves, Commissioner Reeves,
You can try.
Commissioner Sizemore, and Chair Levy are in the room, and I see them. And then Commissioner Patterson, are you able to?
I'm here. I want to tell you that sometimes you guys disable my mic, but I'm back now. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Commissioner Lawson. So all 5 commissioners remain present. Thank you. And then I see Representative Klova. Senator Conway, have you joined us? Senator Holy?
He mentioned that he had a computer issue, so we might need help getting back on.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Senator Holy. Thank you. Okay. So, and Representative Vick was not. Representative Vick, have you been able to join us? Okay. You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. So Chrisinda, please go ahead. Thank you.
Good morning. I have a presentation. I'm just waiting for it to appear on the screen. Thank you. So good morning, everyone. I'm here today. Oh, for the record, my name is Chrisinda Hansen. I'm the Chief Financial Officer here at the Gambling Commission. Today, I'll be giving you an overview of the final wrap-up for fiscal year 22, which officially closed in early September. Also give you an update on where we are with our current fiscal year budget, and then looking forward, some information that I hope you'll find useful as you work on strategic planning tomorrow. Next slide, please. So in fiscal year 22, our revenues were approximately 9% greater than our original allotments. Some of this is due to a change in accounting procedures and recognizing when we receive our revenue. So, for example, tribal reimbursement, you will see that our actual revenues are greater than allotted. I made an accounting change in the fiscal year after I arrived, where we recognize the revenues when the tribes pay them rather than allotting them at a 12th a month. So as we move through the current fiscal year, those numbers will come into alignment with each other. Nonprofit revenues are down. That is because we have less nonprofit licensees than we have in the past, notably less raffle licensees. Sports wagering revenues were up from where they were allotted by the former CFO. This is in part because there were more wagering applicants than had been. Next slide, please. So our expenditures are on track. We're on track, I apologize, for about 75% of what was allotted. This is similar to where they were the last times I've come before you to give you budget updates. Most of the unexpended funds were in personnel because we continue to be short-staffed, and also because we shifted the timeline for our IT modernization project. It was initially allotted to begin in fiscal year 22, and we are just beginning to initiate that project now in fiscal year 23. The other thing I would like to call attention to is that in the previous slide, there was allotted revenues of 16.9 million. And you'll see on this slide that our expenditures were allotted at 18.5 million. We did, however, have a balanced budget. That greater amount of expenditures is because we already have cash on hand for the IT modernization project. The money is in our working capital balance. So we did have a balanced budget for fiscal year 22 for the allotments. The rest of my presentation is a reminder of how we collect fees from some licensees, a little bit of licensee update, and then, as I stated earlier, some information that I hope you'll find useful as you work on strategic planning. So next slide, please. This slide is an overview of punchboard pull tab commercial licensee activity. The blue bars in the graph on the left represent gross gambling receipts over time. You can obviously identify the COVID dip in the middle of that chart, but you can also see that gross gambling receipts have rebounded back to where they were prior to COVID. However, the orange line indicates a downward trend of our number of licensees for punchboard pull tab commercial, and that essentially means we have less licensees to collect revenue from because our licensees fund our agency. So as we have less licensees, there's less entities to collect fees from. And just as a reminder, punchboard pull tab commercial licensees pay a cap of $13,000 per license year. So the pie chart on the right is to show you that from the top 20, and that's defined by gross gambling receipt volume, of the top 20 commercial punchboard pull tab licensees, 25% of them pay their cap of $13,000 in the second quarter, and the remaining 75% of those top 20 pay their cap by quarter 3 of their license year. Next slide, please. So this slide tells a very similar story for house-baked card rooms, where we can see that they haven't quite come back up to where they were in terms of gross gambling receipts, but close. It's approximate, and their license numbers also continue to decline over time. They pay us a maximum of $40,000 per year. And the pie chart on the right, you can also see that 65% of the top 20 card rooms pay their maximum fee by quarter 2. And by quarter 3, 100% of our top 20 card rooms have paid their maximum fee. Next slide, please. So when I came before you in July, I presented a budget to you for this current fiscal year that we're in of 18.4 million. You may recall that that was based on a projected revenue that would support 114 FTEs. So that's our balanced budget. However, to efficiently and fully be able to operate and meet our regulatory responsibilities, we need 124 FTEs. Our projected revenue just will not support that for the current year. Since you approved the budget of 18.4 million, we've had a couple of one-time costs identified. One is our website redesign. That project was built into the fiscal year 23 budget, but we anticipated that would be about $50,000, and we have since found that it's going to be about 5 times that, so $250,000. Additionally, we've identified the need for a records management system. We have not yet begun work to identify what that may cost, but just based on general knowledge and information, we anticipate it may be $1 to $2 million for that project. Additionally, since July, when I last spoke with you, we've had some unanticipated expenditures. One was a settlement of $50,000 that was paid out in July. It is no surprise that we also are seeing increased costs from fuel to service on vehicles to general office supplies. All of our expenditures are going up. In August, we received a memo from the Attorney General stating that they had asked for and been approved for a 20.8% increase in their billing rate. So that is an unanticipated expenditure that we now have to pay. And then other state agency costs are going up as well. So as those rates go up, we can't negotiate those rates. We can't seek those services elsewhere, and we're obligated to pay for those expenditures. And just a reminder, since we're not a general fund agency, when those other agencies increase their rates, we're self-supported and have to generate the revenue to pay those increased costs. We don't get an increase in our budget from general fund when that happens. Next slide, please. So looking beyond the current fiscal year and a little bit of a recap of some of the things I've touched on, our revenue source may continue to decrease. I only presented 2 of our licensee types in today's discussion, but the trend is similar across all of our license types. License numbers in general are declining. At the same time, our expenditures are increasing. We can expect to see personnel pay increases. We can expect, if the trend continues, that we as an agency will be asked to pay more of the cost of benefits for our employees. And as I referred to in the previous slide, all of our general expenditures are increasing. So because of that, our current licensing fees will not sustain the agency in future years. And just a note that currently the way our licensing fees are set, the fees that we have are not directly relational with our annual cost to operate the agency. So our fees are a percentage of gross gambling receipts from the different types of licensees we have. And we expect that the revenue we generate will cover the cost to operate our agency, but they're not directly related at this time. So my last slide is if you have any questions.
I have a couple. Oh. This is Commissioner Sizemore. I have a couple of questions. So on the previous slide, you talked about the budget for 124 or allotment for 124, and it looks like we can afford 114. First quarters ended recently, and can you give me an approximate number of the FTEs that we funded for the first quarter-ish?
Sure. So September actually has not yet closed for the accounting for the state because we work on an accrual basis. But I do know that as of August's closing, we had 90 employees.
Okay, so the savings or the reduction in costs certainly could, if we reached 124 by the end of the year, we would probably have some available funds from this first quarter differential to where we could actually do that. I mean, I'm sure it would make Tina and the rest of the staff very happy to be fully staffed, and it's, I'm sure, very hopeful. But if in fact that was possible, if we could get people in the door, we'd have to make some decisions going forward for future years, but we would have the resources to pay those folks, right?
And anticipated, yes. I would just note, though, that we are offsetting some of our staffing shortages with hiring some temporary contracted staff. So some of that perceived cost savings of being understaffed is being shifted to contracting to ensure that we can continue to do the work of the agency.
Okay, great, thank you. And then, and just, I guess, maybe looking at last year, so while number of licensees are going down, and the anomaly of the pandemic, notwithstanding, our total gross gaming receipts return to prior levels or exceeding prior levels of the pandemic?
In general, yes, the nonprofits as a whole are lagging more so than any of the commercial side of things.
So yeah, so we certainly have some levers and dials that we can adjust for rates and caps on various activities, right?
That is certainly further discussion that is warranted, yes.
Okay.
Director Griffin, did you have a comment about any of that first?
Whoops, sorry. Yes, I would just note that, and of course, take the word CFO, of course, who's monitoring the numbers. But one thing to note, while we are having cost savings by not fulfilling all of the positions, we have, as indicated in the slides, are experiencing some significant cost increases in other areas that were not anticipated or budgeted. So those increases will eat away at the savings. So yeah, I'm a tad bit conservative and would, yes, we'll be watching the numbers. If by some wonderful chance we get close to going beyond those numbers, but yes, costs are going up significantly. So thank you.
Okay, and then Representative Klobu's had her hand up for a little while, so you can go ahead, and then we'll get to Commissioner Reeds.
No, that's okay. These are great questions. So I fully recognize that there is a certain level of basic operating expenses that don't really scale with how many licenses we have or how many employees we have. There's really just your basic cost of doing business. And then I also want to recognize that when we have lower than what is optimal for FTEs, that while we see a savings recorded on the balance sheet, what we don't see is any kind of backlog of work. Because if there's not someone to do it, either it gets piled up on other people who then get overworked, or it remains undone. Those are just the physical realities of that. And so kind of recognizing both of those things, and maybe somebody else who's been here longer may know the answer to this, but in the past, in order to make sure that the commission has the appropriate personnel to do the task at hand, which is to make sure that gambling is honest and fair, and what has there been done in terms of raising the licensing fee so that it is more closely approximating the actual working, the amount of money you need to run the organization? Is that something you consider in the future? Because I think the opposite of that would be to maybe increase a whole bunch of gambling in order to pay for the thing, and maybe that justification is a little trickier for me.
So I would indeed maybe defer to Commissioner Griffin, since I don't have the historical knowledge of fee.
Welcome to the team.
Yes,
Tina.
So I think Crescenda meant to say director and.
Oh, I am so sorry. I apologize, Tina.
You can't see the scuttlebutt that's happened within the room, so.
I apologize.
It's all good, Crescenda. And we are, Crescenda has been with us now almost a year, so we are thankful to have her. So what has happened in the past, Representative Kloba, is just, as you've indicated, not the part about trying to increase gambling, but the where we take a look at our license fees, and as also Commissioner Sizemore mentioned, those levers and what'd you say, dials and levers, yes, under the new license fee structure. And so we haven't, in 2014, we had a significant license fee increase, and then
6%.
yes, across the board, 6%, and that was very significant. It wasn't across the board with a certain percentage amount in 2018 when we did the restructure, and the restructure then is what we have now, and so those would be those dials and levers that could be adjusted through rulemaking, and that's what we've done in the past, and I think that's most likely, and I anticipate us having to do that exercise in the very near future.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Reeves?
Thanks. I'm gonna borrow your microphone.
Oh, yeah.
So first, Christina, thank you so much for that very detailed presentation, and for the visual learner in the room, really appreciate the charts and the graphs because I think it helps synthesize the data. I do want to really be clear. I've got two questions for you, and then one point. I want to make sure I'm hearing you correctly, that really our cost savings, as Commissioner Sizemore might frame it, isn't really a cost savings because we've had a cost increase of just equipment, supplies, cost in general, personnel. We've had an increased litigation cost this year that we had not anticipated. We are hiring contractors to backfill our employee deficit at a higher rate of cost. So I just want to be really clear, we're not actually holding a cost savings or a surplus. We are reallocating resources at a higher rate in other areas and making up that difference elsewhere. Is that accurate?
That is. There was I would just be clear, the numbers for fiscal year 22 don't reflect that because we were analyzing and looking at options at that time. But in the current fiscal year, yes, that's an accurate statement.
Okay, perfect. So I know that we're going to be talking about this tomorrow, Director Griffin, as we talk about kind of what our strategic outlook looks like over the next couple of years. And I'm not sure the best way to go about this, if I should save it for tomorrow, but I think I really want to make it clear publicly. I have serious concerns about the discussion that we've just had, where we know that one of our client sectors, the nonprofit arena, is declining in their licensing, and that then puts, as an economic developer, I'll tell you, that then puts increased cost on the other consumers in the market who are picking up those license fees. I don't think that's a very equitable way for us to be budgeting. And I would love for us to include a strategic goal specific around equitable revenue generation and fee structures, with an understanding of what our actual expenditures are, and then tying our revenue directly to the expenditures that we make, with a goal of a more sustainable financing model that doesn't actually put pressure on one subset of our licensing market over others. And I would like us to include essentially a personal scoping map. If we're going to start talking about increasing fees on folks, I'd like to understand how that 124 people that we are hiring to accomplish our mission directly correlates to the scopes of work in which we are charging people fees to get that work done. Does that make sense to folks? And I don't know if I need to make a motion or if I can just say it for the record and then it magically happens because staff is that great. I'd be looking for any input you have on how to make sure that that is actually included in a directive.
It feels like that you described what we did in 2017, 2018. Now it just needs adjusted.
See, that I don't think that's true though, because I think what we're doing is increasing fees on whoever's left purchasing licenses. It doesn't seem to me like what we're doing is saying, this is the full context of how we generate revenue, and we need to be thinking equitably about how we do that work. What it seems like is we're like, hey, these are the people still buying licenses. We're just going to increase your fees and make it cost more for your license to make sure that we can cover our costs. And that doesn't seem equitable or fair to me. I don't know if that makes sense, but I would like us to evaluate that. And I think Crescinda, having worked with Crescinda in the past, I think probably has some great ideas on what we can do around that. But I also think from an equity and inclusion perspective, and I mean that with a big E, big I, I'd like us to be thinking about our revenue generation from that perspective as well. So should we just save that for tomorrow's conversation?
So I think there's two different ways to go about this. One, I'll go back and capture what you said, so it's available for us for tomorrow. And or two, you could decide for staff to look at this separate and apart from the strategic plan.
Can we do both?
You can certainly do both.
I would love to give Crescinda and the finance team the authorizing environment to evaluate this system and the processes that we use for licensing with a big E, big I focus and a big S, sustainability.
So do we need a motion for that, or is it, or just?
I don't know how that works. Like, commissioners just provide direction.
I think we can just provide direction.
So I think you can certainly do a motion if you'd like to give that clarity to staff. Can
Great.
you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
Should we wait until this conversation's over?
Oh,
or just
sorry,
do
yes.
this one right now, or what, because I know.
Can you tell I'm so excited,
Senator
Crescinda?
Conway also has a question, it looks like, so I just want to make sure we're covering everything. Okay,
Happy to wait.
Senator Conway, go ahead. I think you're muted, sir.
There we are. Sorry I'm late here, but my sense of this is that I was going to ask Commissioner Sizemore this, that we tend to evaluate our license fees on a not year by year, but we tend to, I think, Bud, you brought forward several years ago a revamp of our license fees. And I think Crescinda has given us a warning here that we're seeing a decline in numbers, which is going to obviously impact our fees. The situation we work under is that our fees pay for our operation expenses. Okay, that's not a general fund issue. That's a fee-driven issue. But I guess, Bud, my question was for you, and I had the same question yesterday, is that how often do we reevaluate our fee structure to recognize our increasing costs?
So, this is just my perspective, is that I think we were probably due to start looking at that when the pandemic hit. It ought to be probably continuous. I think, and it may seem like I'm opposed to change anything, and to a degree, I probably have some ownership here that affects how I talk about it, look at it. But I think that there's a whole bunch of history that we ought to look at, from the preceding fee structure to the conversion to this fee structure, and that's simply, the variability within the system, there's really, the greatest factors on what anybody pays for a fee is their gross gambling receipts, the rate at which that activity is applied to those gross gambling receipts, and then what the cap is for the maximum amount of what a license could be, or that license fee could be. So all, those two things, the rate and the cap, are the things that we can tweak there. So I think that in this realm, we're not attacking the few remaining licensees, because those few remaining licensees are having greater and greater gambling receipts. So if you adjust the rate, you adjust the cap, then those are not like attacking somebody. It's just evaluating and making sure that for punchboard pull tabs, the cost of regulation and enforcement is, somewhat attributable to those activities. So I'm maybe a little defensive, but I think we instituted the structure, and I think it's worked pretty well. I think during the pandemic, people didn't have to pay a licensing fee in the months that, or in the quarters that they weren't generating any revenue. So I think it worked way better, was very much equity-driven system, because you don't pay if you don't generate gambling receipts. So I'm not sure if I answered the question or not, but I guess to loop back around to it, I felt like we were getting very close to the point where we should take a look and see how it was working just as the pandemic hit. So now that we've kind of rebounded from that, it feels like we're certainly there, and I think our CFO and director are giving us fair warning that there's not sirens and alarm bells yet, but they will be if we don't do anything.
So, Bud, are you calling for, it seemed to me that you negotiated this fee structure pretty comprehensively several years ago. And what you're saying is that we just need to review it and see where we're at. Is that what I hear you saying? That we need to have a more comprehensive analysis here to show whether or not, as planned, it's meeting our cost?
Yeah, I have thought that, like I said, as we were approaching the pandemic, that certainly we were at that point. And so if staff feels like, yeah, we're back to where gross gambling receipts are relatively predictable, it feels like we could probably, and we're going to need more revenue, then it's certainly time to do it.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see any more hands, so Commissioner Reeves, if you want to move forward with your earlier motion.
Feel free to correct me if I'm not getting at the thing we're trying to get at, but I'd like to move that we include a strategic goal of equitable revenue generation and fee structures with an understanding of tying our revenue generation directly to our expenditures, with a goal of more sustainable financing, to include in that a personnel scope map to ensure that our personnel costs are aligning to the scopes of work that we are charging people for.
Okay. Do we have any second?
Sounds like no. Don't worry, I'll bring it up tomorrow.
And, what we could do as well, because, so with the 2018 license fee restructure, it was costs were analyzed for the rational relationship to the fee. And so what we could also do, and what we would go back to it probably and start with, is pull that history of what the 2018 structure was based on and how those numbers were arrived at. And that would be the first place to start. But yes, I would agree that even if we were to just simply adjust those knobs and levers, that looking at the relationship of what costs are in terms of staffing, what staff is actually doing for regulation and enforcement for each type of licensee is aligning with the revenue that we need to collect for that group of licensees. So
yeah, and I'm not judging, just to be clear, Director, I'm not judging the previous fee structure. I'm simply saying we're doing a strategic plan, and I believe, as somebody who does organizational development for a living, like, this is the absolutely appropriate time to say, not only are we setting strategic goals to accomplish, but I want us to be clear that this is the perfect time to evaluate whether or not the fee structure that we created and the fee structure we're proposing to continue using is actually sustainable, equitable, and inclusive. And yeah,
agree.
that's all I'm trying to get to. I'm not trying to put Commissioner Sizemore on the defensive and say your fee structure stinks, Commissioner, and we should do something different. It's more creating the authorizing environment for our finance team and others to come back and say, this is what we've been doing. Yes, it's great. No, it's not. If it's not, what are the gaps in the system? What can we be doing to be more equitable, inclusive, and sustainable? Give the commission some direction on what that looks like and how we pursue those strategic objectives. So that was the only thing I was trying to get to, but I'm happy to talk more about it tomorrow.
And we'll go ahead and summarize the information and have it available so you can see it tomorrow. Because this is a recording, and so we'll summarize it. We'll check in with you to make sure it summarizes accurately, and that will be a great place for us to start tomorrow. Thank you.
All right.
She's like, we're good. Keep going.
Okay, so do we need to say anything about that motion?
Nope, it failed.
It's just done?
I, for lack of a second.
Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
All right. So we will go ahead and move on then to.
Thanks, Chrisetta.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you, Crescenda, sorry. To defaults with Adam Teal, our interim legal manager. Is Adam here? No, he's right there.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
For the record, Adam Teal, interim legal manager, have two defaults on the docket today, so I will get right to it. First case is John M. Chang. That's cause number CR 2022-00279. Mr. Chang holds a CRE license number 68-30886. That license is not currently linked to a house bank card room. It is set to expire in March 11th of 2023. On October 28th, 2022, a Washington State Gambling Commission agent received notification from Last Frontier Casino's general manager that they found one of their off-duty employees, John Chang, stealing chips from another player. That agent was able to review the video surveillance from the incident and showed Chang reached over and took a full row of chips from another player, and he used those chips to protect his hand. Eventually, Chang began taking the chips from that stack and gambled with them and ended up losing all of them. At a scheduled interview with the special agent, Chang called Last Frontier, gave them the heads up that he was not going to show up for his interview and resigned his position at the same time. Director Griffin signed and issued the charges, which Chang was served with by regular and certified mail within 3 days of July 26, 2022. Meaning their response was required by August 18th of 2022. To date, the commission has received nothing from Mr. Chang, and thus the commission may take final action. Mr. Chang cannot prove with clear and convincing evidence he is qualified for licensure, and as a result, staff recommends you sign the order in front of you revoking Mr. Chang's CRE license number 68-30886. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you. Is Mr. Chang here at all? Doesn't sound like it. Do any commissioners have any questions? No. Okay. Is there any public comment? Any issue? No. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I move to revoke John Chang's public card room employee license number 68-30886 as presented by staff.
And I'll second. Was seconded by Commissioner Patterson, I believe. Okay. Any further discussion? No. Okay. Everyone vote. Wait. Lost my mind. Okay. How many ayes do we have?
All those in favor?
All those in favor? Right. You make this was
Aye.
aye. Okay.
Call for the nose.
Is there? Do we have any nays? All those opposed?
You're doing great.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. Thank you. All right, Mr. Teal.
All right. Second case, again, for the record, Adam Teal, interim legal manager for the Gambling Commission. This is case number CR 2022-00597, Mitchell Bonneville. Mr. Bonneville holds a Class 3 certification, certification number 69-49578. This certification is not currently linked to any tribe. It is set to expire December 28th of 2022. On January 6th, 2022, WSGC Special Agent was notified by Kalispell's TGA that they were taking administrative action against Mr. Bonneville. Reason behind that action they were taking was due to Mr. Bonneville being criminally charged in Spokane County Superior Court. On March 15th of 2022, Mr. Bonneville was found guilty in that case of failure to remain at the scene of an accident with an injured person. So the administrative action that was taken against Mr. Bonneville by Kalispell's TGA was finalized resulting in a revocation on April 20th, 2022. To date, Gambling Commission has received no notification from Mr. Bonneville of either his criminal charge, criminal conviction, or the administrative action taken against him by Kalispell's TGA. Director Griffin signed and issued the charges, which Mr. Bonneville was served with by regular and certified mail within 3 days of July 26, 2022. Meaning that a response was due from Mr. Bonneville by August 18th of 2022. To date, the commission has received nothing from Mr. Bonneville. Thus, the commission may take final action. Mr. Bonneville cannot prove with clear and convincing evidence he is qualified for licensure. As a result, staff recommends you sign the order in front of you revoking Mr. Bonneville's Class 3 certification, certification number 69-49578. And again, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Is Mr. Bonneville present at all? Doesn't look like it. All right. Do we have any questions from any commissioners? Discussion? Any public comments from anyone? Not online. Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move. I move to revoke employee certification number 69-49578.
All right. We have moved and seconded. We have any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much, Adam. Appreciate it. Yes.
I'd like to just take a moment and recognize Adam for all of the great work that he's done. I don't know that Adam is going to say this, but this is his last commission meeting. He is moving on to another state agency to be an administrative law judge. And I just really appreciate Adam's stepping forward over the last year plus into this role, and not only taking on the managerial duties, but also continuing to do his work as staff attorney with all of these cases as well. And so just very appreciative of Adam, and he's doing a whole bunch of work before he leaves too. So he's setting us up as well as possible. And so I'm just very thankful for Adam and wish him all the best moving forward.
Thank you. My absolute pleasure, everybody.
Thank you, Adam. Congratulations on the new role. That sounds fun.
Thank you.
Good luck.
All right, so that concludes our public meeting for the day. Public comment.
Sorry.
Okay, is there any public comment from anyone?
Do we have executive session today?
Yes, we do. That's what we're doing. So at this time, we're going to go into, at 11:14 a.m., the Gambling Commission will be going into executive session to discuss current and potential agency litigation with legal counsel, including tribal negotiations. And we are expected to reconvene at 2 p.m. for the sole purpose of adjournment. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back at 2.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Bye.